Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Top 5 DEI, the premier podcast for and about DEI professionals. I'm your host, Jason Lambert, aka Dr. J, and my goal is to interview every person in the world who manages, practices, teaches, researches, or publishes anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm so glad you tuned in, and if you are ready to learn about some insightful DEI practices from experts from all over the world, and about DEI experiences from people just like you, join me and let's dive right in. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Top 5 DEI, where we hold courageous conversations for and about DEI professionals. As always, our format is that we ask our special guests to choose from a list of questions, but they can only choose 5 questions, or they can provide their own. And we're going to ask them those questions, but also what's so special is we get to learn a little something about our guests as well, right? And so they're going to share with us their top 5 lists of one of their favorite things. All right. So welcome. My name's Dr. J, and I'm so excited about our guest. One of the things that I love about my profession, being a professor, and also in this consulting space, is I get to meet so many amazing people. And I met our guest at an awards banquet through a mutual acquaintance for, and I'll plug Blacks United and Leading Technology, awesome organization that supports Black technology professionals. We were at this awards banquet and we got to talking and, we just kind of were in sync. And as soon as I learned that she was a chief diversity officer, of course, I just lit up and it's like, you have to come talk to my students, you have to talk to my class. And then we're doing the podcast too. And so, the rest is history. So before we start, I need to tell you about our major guest, Nickoria Johnson. And Nickoria Johnson is a partner and the chief diversity officer at Credera. As chief diversity officer, she is responsible for accelerating the mission of amplifying voices of underrepresented groups and synergizing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts towards unified goals to ensure accessibility, focus, and visibility of DE&I for the firm. Nickoria is also a seasoned industry leader with over 25 years of experience in leading global digital transformation efforts and scaling technology to support dynamic business outcomes. So she's a whole lot smarter than me. And it's awesome. True. And I always love to see women, especially, Black women in STEM and in tech. Outside of the office, Nickoria is a passionate advocate for girls in STEM and enjoys mentoring and coaching a student dance team in her spare time. Oh, please.
In my spare time. I can't move anymore, so I teach others too.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't say about that. So maybe we could ask what you should have maybe asked top 5 dance moves. I'm going to add that.
Oh boy.
The next
yeah.
person.
As long as there's not a demonstration, happy to share.
Christine says, sign me up. You already have your first client. It's a career change there, So, man, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jason. This means a whole lot to me. And, I believe when you meet people, you meet them for a reason. And so I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. So we're going to jump right on in. I know there's a lot of questions to go through. Everybody's like, man, these are a lot of questions. Right? And I'm sure any of those you could have easily answered. I'm sure you probably could spend an hour answering each of those questions, but we only have 5. And
we have 5 minutes per question.
5 minutes per question. So I'm going to jump right on in and ask you, I'm pretty sure most want to know, how did you get into the DEI field, right? Tell us your journey.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. So mine is a little bit unique. So as you mentioned, I started out in technology. I was blessed to be a teenager that was thrown into by my mother a program similar to Inroads, that's for underserved communities to connect youth that are, at least expressing interest in math and science with companies. So I got an internship through this program, and that was kind of my first exposure to what DE&I could look like. And I bring that up because it was really influential. My mother was a teacher. My dad played basketball. My grandparents worked in factories. I would have never found technology without the intentional investment that this program brought. So if I flash forward, I'm working in consulting. I'm traveling globally, which was a total blessing. And for me, it's natural to show up and connect with people and to build teams that are diverse and to look at people's potential and not necessarily where they're from or their actual resume. That's kind of how I led my life. So I did consulting in my early 20s, moved into technology and worked in IT places like Blockbuster, insert laugh here, GameStop, a financial services company here in Dallas. And again, I participated in the women's groups that were available because back then that's really all the things that companies were investing in is how do we get women? How do we get women in tech? And so I moved back to Credera, which is a firm I'm at now, back into consulting when my son was old enough. And they had a women's group, joined that. And then the summer of 2020 happened, right? And George Floyd's murder. And for me, living most of my life as a woman in tech, having to fit in with, white, male dominated industry, like I didn't really talk about my walk, right? And after that, after George Floyd's murder, I had a chance to really share my voice more broadly. And then to look at my responsibility, number one, as a Black mother, and number two, as a senior Black leader at our company, what are we doing? What are we doing to support our people? How do we, make sure that we're listening and shaping how we're supporting our people within the four walls? And I started having all these conversations. We started doing panels, we started doing storytelling, and I found myself waking up every day trying to figure out how to get better at this DE&I thing in the four walls of my company. And so I was really, you know, in the right space because the CEO and I had been talking for a while. CEO, white, male, wonderful person, great heart, great spirit. I would follow him anywhere. But he just couldn't, he had realized that he couldn't understand the different walks that a lot of people were going through. And so we talked about having executive level sponsorship of DE&I in our company. And a couple months later, we co-created this role that was brand new to the company, Chief Diversity Officer. And what was really the most important thing was how do we create a full-time executive that already has influence in the company, that already hopefully understands at least some of the walks that our people are walking to really lead this. And it really was about that full-time accessibility, that direct report into the CEO role. But for me personally, I don't sign up for stuff that I don't know anything about, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in this role. Here are the things that I need. So I went out and got a certificate from Cornell. I went out and I met with DE&I executives in the industry, some that I knew, some that were new friends, to figure out how do we approach these things. I don't want to be that person that lived tech all her life and then comes in with all of these assumptions. So developing that was really important. So now it's been a year and a half. I get to wake up every day and figure out how to help people on this journey. And it has been a complete and total blessing for me. So that's how I landed here.
Man, that's awesome. That's an amazing journey, amazing story. You mentioned the fact that like when you first started, you really wanted to make sure you understood DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know many people sometimes when I'm talking to folks, they don't really understand the terms and this discipline, this industry is always steadily evolving. And yeah. And sometimes based on the organization, it's important for organizations to really customize what DE&I means for their organization or to them. How do they define it? And so I want to ask, how do you define diversity, equity, inclusion? So in other words, like what do those terms mean to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll tell you a little bit about this journey we went on. So last year, we produced our first DE&I annual report. So our transparency report. Where are we at? What are our priorities? Where do we need to improve? Right. And it was a collaboration between our US organization and our UK organization, who had been doing some DE&I stuff as well. And so in doing that, it's interesting because we discovered exactly that, Jason, that DE and I does not mean the same things to people, especially across the pond. So where we landed was with some custom definitions. I'll share those with you because they really resonate with my heart. So diversity is the presence of a difference in a given setting, right? So one of the things we tried to fix is that people were calling candidates diverse before they even put them in a box, right? So because you're from a particular background or particular walk, oh, you're the diversity candidate. We hear that a lot, right? But
Mhm.
diversity is truly a relational concept. You have uniqueness about you. You have things about you that make you, different from other people, but it's only until you put that person or that individual or that thing into the environment relation to others. I think people miss that. And that's really
Right.
important because it's kind of awkward slash derogatory, if you want to be strong,
Mhm.
to call somebody, oh, that's the diversity candidate. So we wanted to be really intentional about that part.
That's so
Um,
true. I've had someone when I accepted a role somewhere, and one of my colleagues said that, "Oh, they didn't know that they asked, are you diverse?" I'm like,
what is
"That's not an
like,
adjective for a person."
seriously?
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
diverse of thought. I myself, as an individual, cannot be diverse. I mean, I can have different attitudes, personalities
Sure.
on different days, but racially, and so, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because people do use that term often to describe people, and it's not even grammatically correct, right?
It's
So
not even grammatically correct. So, like in our onboarding, when we bring new people in and I do a session on DE&I for them, we talk about your uniqueness. Like, what are the three things that if you had to describe something about yourself? And literally, we get all kinds of answers. So, it's not even just about race and gender, which a lot of people misrepresent, right? They think, oh, I'm regular, white dude, and I have no diversity about me. Oh, is that really true? What is the
right.
uniqueness and what unique thought are you bringing to the table? Now, I also say it is very important to address some of the systemic injustices in the world and the bias and the discrimination, but you have to be open to diversity. Really, everybody has a particular uniqueness about them. When you bring things together, that creates a very wonderful voice. Then moving to inclusion. So inclusion, everybody says, "Hey, invite people to the party or, invite them to the table." That's great. Wonderful. But that's really not inclusion. In my opinion, the phrase that sticks the most to me is inclusion relates to the quality of the human experience. And
I
so
like
if you
that.
start breaking that down in terms of what that looks like in the workplace, it's being welcomed, it's being valued, it's understanding your contributions, it's feeling supported, it's all of those things that relate to, again, the quality of the human experience. And so you can't take one of those in isolation because you might do a great job at making people feel welcome. And then the rest of their walk, they feel lost in the company. They don't have, the mentoring or the sponsorship. They don't have the things that really create that feeling of true belonging. And so that's the thing around inclusion I like to focus on.
I like that a lot. I like that definition. I think that's the first time I've heard it that way too, you know?
Right.
It's
See, I
been
brought some unique thought to the table.
I know, right?
The last term is equity, and I covered them specifically in DIE, which nobody wants to talk about DI in terms of acronyms. They want to talk about DE and I, but I really think they build upon each other. So, you know, equity really makes sure that people have access and equal access to opportunity is the part that we really need to focus on. For many, many years, people have talked about equality. And I am very excited and happy that we went on that journey in the world, in the US, et cetera, or else you and I, Jason, we wouldn't be sitting here talking today.
Mhm.
But that's really not what it's about. So if you're looking at it from a company perspective, you are best positioned when everyone can create the right opportunities. So if you think about an apple tree, right? And not everyone's the same height, but equality says you give everybody the same box. And so if you think about it, if I'm a person of shorter stature, I'm going to have a harder time than the person from the NBA to reach that apple. And so as a company, if we're trying our best to create as many grab as many apples as possible, how are we looking at each person uniquely to make sure that there's not bias, i.e., this tall person going to get more apples than the short person? And then what are we also doing to address the systematic kind of injustices out there, right? The places and spaces where people might need a little bit more support. And so bias exists, isms exist, whatever term you want to put in front of that. And so as companies, equity really means balancing the playing field and making sure everybody has access. And I think that gets a little bit lost sometimes. So wanted to definitely bring that up.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think many people, they overlook that or misunderstand that term equity a lot. Right. And
Yeah.
I like to tell
Mhm.
folks, it's really about, especially in organizations, it's about if there's a goal set that you want your employees to accomplish or achieve,
Mhm.
you want to make sure they get that they're able to achieve that goal.
There you
Right.
go. That's it.
And so it would be crazy for us to have a star employee. We invite them to my first day of work where they have all these accolades. They know that they're going to perform well at our company. And then they get to they get to our organization. Their office is on the fifth floor, but we have no ramps, right? No accessi no, accessibility. We
Exactly.
we we
Only
don't
fear.
have right, only stairs, right? So we think of that, it's like, yeah, that makes sense to us now, but it's
Mhm.
the same thing, right? It's the same analogy. The goal is we
Definitely.
want them to do their job well, so we need to put forth these accommodations to
Yeah.
help them to do that, and it's not about treating someone special or different, it's about making sure because everyone is unique in all our own
Everybody.
special ways.
Yeah.
And so this just motivates them, encourages them, and supports them to do the job that they've been asked to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add is, companies are doing a lot of equity studies, and usually they go back again to gender, race, are we paying people the right amount of money? Are we promoting at the same pace? But exactly what you said, Jason, about, are we providing accessible environments, right?
Mhm.
Where people from all literal walks of life can show up. Are we addressing like neurodiversity? Like, what are the things that we're doing to try to better understand an individual and make sure that they can be successful in our four walls?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about how you got into the field, how you define D&I. We talked a little bit about what companies need to do. But even when companies sometimes introduce diversity programs and activities, sometimes it just doesn't the way we plan. Sure, you know that. So
Yeah.
and people always give different answers. There are multiple answers to this question.
Sure.
What do you believe is the most common reason why efforts to promote diversity, equity, inclusion organizations face backlash in some companies?
So when I first started this journey, the thing I would have said is, hey, sponsorship from the top. Do you have sponsorship from the top? Do you have budget? Can you actually are you set up to be successful in your corporate environment? But I'm going to break it down to you. What I am learning is that people are great about DE&I when it's easy. Let's just put it that way. So what I'm finding in my research and experiences now that we're trying to serve other clients is that people are diluting DE&I because it's scary to some people down to just belonging, not even inclusion, but belonging. Oh yeah, we're going to center around belonging. Okay, well, what
Yes.
happened to all the stuff that really matters, right?
Right.
And
I've even heard like civility or respect to
yeah,
others. So they just
respect.
totally disentangle it, take the eye out the picture sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because of
totally
that
taking
fear.
it out
Yeah.
of the picture. And then I started thinking about the why. And so I've got my own thoughts. So this is not representative of my company. This is my own Nickoria thinking. I think part of it is that, bringing more diversity to the table, which is the D, right? It's great, but then you have to change something about your company to, again, pointing back to providing equity, providing support, making sure I can sit across the screen from you, even if my walk is different, or I can sit across a table from you if you're back in the physical environment. And we can be good and we can build trust and we can do the thing that we're supposed to do. Well, there's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable sitting across the screen or sitting across the table with people that are different than them. And the more you're bringing, like they might be able to avoid it if it's just, one or two people at the company. But once it starts being critical scale of people that are, from an ethnically diverse background, people that are from the LBTGQ plus community, people that have a different religious background, it becomes personal sometimes because we're asking people to show up as their authentic selves. So I think the diversity factor scares folks that are used to maybe being in the majority, and that is uncomfortable. And then the second thing is equity. Equity is not necessarily a given, and people don't like their babies being called ugly. They don't like trying, raising a hand and going, maybe we're doing it wrong and we have to do something different. And both of those areas are uncomfortable. I would say inclusion is the place that everybody wants to feel included. Everybody wants to belong, or everybody wants respect, right? Those are kind of more table stakes, but the D and the E are really the challenge. And I think companies that are leaning into that, great, but it makes people feel uncomfortable. And so, yeah, I can talk a little bit about the 2% maybe in another conversation. You're always going to have that 2% at the company that are not fans of what you're doing, regardless of the intentions, regardless of the business value you're bringing. It's always going to be a certain segment of your organization. Hopefully, it's only 2% that you can't get there, but those are the ones that can speak loudest. And sometimes they can be the ones that are that backlash and that noise can kind of dilute the value that you are adding. So,
Yeah, that's so true. That's why, it can be tough. It can be challenging because of that 2%. It can be 20%, right?
it could
And
be.
and
Yeah,
change takes time.
it
Uh,
does.
and sometimes companies need a little bit of healthy turnover in order to change their culture to become that they want it to be.
Yeah.
It's just what they call it. I think it's called the attraction,
Mhm.
similarity, attrition paradigm, where
Yeah,
if you're a company that doesn't value DEI, you're going to attract folks who don't value DEI. If you're a
exactly.
company that promotes and value it, then you will promote those same type of people. If you're a
Yep.
company that's in transition, if you stay firm to the course, you'll have that healthy turnover, and over time, you'll have the culture that you're looking for because those
Mm.
people don't want. The ones who aren't going to buy into the culture of supporting DEI efforts, they'll leave and go somewhere where they want to
They
be.
will leave and go somewhere else, and that's probably the best thing for your company. So to
Yeah.
your point, Jason, I love this phrase, speed of the leader, speed of the team, right? So like you said, if their leaders don't value DE&I, they're going to hire people that are similar to them. But if they do, then imagine the world where you can make so much more impact because that's part of who you're bringing to the table. And then the second thing I'll say, that's another reason why DE&I efforts have to be sponsored from the top. Because those are hard decisions to make, right? If your department leaders are like, oh my gosh, we're leaving our most tenured, most valuable people because we're doing too much in the DE&I space, right? If that is the case, then someone at the top has to be okay with that, to be able to come alongside and help really focus on the future that you want to be. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Very, very important. And it seems like oftentimes middle management, they're the ones that often
Absolutely.
that's where it happens, which is why it has to come from the top down and also from the bottom up so that some of those middle managers, which is where a lot of issues
Mhm.
arise,
Yeah.
occur, you
And
know.
you think about, this is not on my script, quote unquote, but you think about the multi-generational workforce that we're in right now and the students you have here. The thing that I'm learning from the generation of students and incoming campus hires and kind of the younger generation is this is not okay. These things are not okay. And so, you really get into a challenge where your middle management doesn't actively seek to understand the generational diversity, right? And that what I believed when I started out my career in my 20s, which was a long, long time ago, it's not the same thing that's required or that motivates or that really helps to build these leaders of tomorrow. And that's exactly where the problem is. The middle management, it either makes a company or breaks a company. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. I love that. It's like the new generation, the new workforce is coming up. It's DEI is it's like it's a given, like it's imperative. It must be in place. It's like
must,
that's
yeah.
all they know. That is the expectation now,
Yep.
and that's not. And I don't think that's going to change. It's going to continue to.
Yeah.
Also, top leadership, they know the resources they have. It's like top leadership, they have the resource, they have the know how, they have that bird's eye viewpoint, right? And then those that are at the lower levels of the organization, those individuals, they have the energy. They're on the ground floor and see what's going on
Ground
every
floor.
day. And it's so easy for those at the top and the middle to be so far removed,
Mhm.
which is so why it's so important to get those signals from leadership. That's so true. But as you and I both know, sometimes in some companies, it doesn't work out the way we want
No.
all the time. And I don't think many people understand the challenges and the issues, and just sometimes even like anxiety, emotional anxiety that people in our area go through.
Yeah.
So, so I want to ask you: have you ever become jaded or have negative thoughts and doubts about the work you do? Because you know the statistics, right? You know the
Yep.
research. You might even know what's going on in your company. That that's people aren't privileged to that information, so that's tough too. Because you have to keep that confidential, and all
Yep.
this is going on, and you have to bottle that up inside. So
Yeah.
how does that work? Do you have jaded, have negative doubts, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes. And I have a therapist. Yay. I mean, seriously, I laugh about that, but
Yeah, yeah, me too.
really important to have someone that can just encourage me and help give me perspective outside of the day-to-day work. So I will say that I have developed a community of DE&I leaders. Like I mentioned, when I first got thrown into this role, I was like, okay, who's doing this right now? Like who can I learn from? And I've got a round table of people that we talk once a month, and we talk about the things that are happening. We talk about the issues. The first thing we do is we talk about highs and lows, like what's going on. And the last meeting we had last month really was about cost cutting measures and trying to navigate how to continue to justify investing in DE&I, why it's important. And those are real conversations people are having. I didn't grow up in HR, so I haven't been used to walking through these HR issues, whether it's harassment, hostile work environment, or just microaggressions. And so those are all things that I was, fresh into looking at last year. Lastly, our engagement survey results. So it's really interesting when you give people an open text field to share anything that they think about how you're progressing with DEI. Some of those comments were not good. And the first year that I saw those, it was heavy. And I just wanted to cry because these are people that I've been working with for years. And someone in this population that I know is feeling like they're now less privileged. They can't show up as their full selves at work. And now it's a big deal. Or, I can't show up for the LGBTQ plus community because it goes against my faith. Like there are really hard and sad things that you see. So yeah, it gets hard. I think it's important for people not to be a team of one. I do have a DE&I manager that we meet every single day. And I couldn't be on this journey without her because we can commiserate together. We can be like, girl, what in the world? You can have those honest kind of moments and
Mhm.
then check each other to figure out, okay, how do we keep going? Because what we're doing is bigger than this negative moment or this one person or even the 2% that we talked about. So I think you have to just continue to focus on the positive things that you're doing and the bar that you're moving, and not even inside the workplace. It's really the hearts and the minds that you are changing and getting people to baby step from one place to the next place. You have to celebrate all of those moments because there's always going to be kind of this undertone of not support, lack of, and as we navigate our political landscape over the next few years, I'm pretty sure that's going to be even more challenging. Let's just put
Yes.
it that way. And I'll leave that part alone.
Okay. But you know what? I will not leave alone is I need to get an invite for that round table if I
It's
can.
okay.
That sounds like
You need to
you
come
have
on.
some great conversations, and and I need that support too. I need that support too. We all do.
Everyone does,
Face.
because
Yeah,
this is hard work. It's
yeah,
important work. I still am so happy about waking up every day to fight the good fight and to, help reshape our futures. But it gets hard sometimes, and you just have to keep moving forward, knowing that you're making an impact. And to your point, it takes time. I was at a session, probably a couple months ago, and one of the things I wrote down in my notebook, I didn't want to write it down, but sometimes it takes generations for change to really show up. And so
yeah,
this is not something you can go in with your agenda for DE&I and necessarily see all of the results within a year. It may not happen in 2 to 5 years, but at some point, the work that you're putting in and the seeds that you're planting will continue continue on for generations. And so that's what I kind of try to remember.
That's a great perspective to have because you're absolutely right about change and how, what do you say? Time heals all
Time heals.
wounds, right?
Absolutely.
Because when I talk to a lot of folks, many, for most people, I'd say the general population, because of the political climate, because of what we see on TV, recent news events, they think that this DEI is a new thing. They don't
Mhm.
realize that folks been having these
Fighting for stuff for
conversations
a long
and
time.
doing research, and even doing
Yeah.
consulting in this space,
Yeah.
like, as early as ever since like right after the Civil Rights Act was passed. And so, the 1960s, 19,
Yeah.
so we're talking about that. Like, you can go back, there's research from the 70s. There's something from the 1960s that talked about how there was a study when blacks and whites, because back then the study was always black and white,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That was like the only race that existed then, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But
Agree.
if they found that blacks and whites found similar music interests, I think it was Lot and Lot, the authors, 1965, then it reduced their I mean, it increased the racial tolerance of white participants
Yeah.
just by recognizing that, oh, this black guy likes the same music as I do, right?
Yeah.
So this research has been around a long time. But speak to your point, generations. That was the 1960s. Now we're here in 2022.
Mhm.
We're having these same conversations, but
Same
this time,
conversations.
yeah, but that needle moves a little bit every single time. It's always it's a small bit of progress, but it's moving forward though. That's a good
It's
thing.
moving forward. And that's a good thing. And it's so funny that you bring that up, that it's music. So I try to balance kind of, the hard stuff with the fun stuff, right? And so the fun stuff, at least from my perspective, is learning about other cultures, learning about food, learning about music. And you find so many parallels that at least open up the door for conversation. So if you're
Yeah,
finding yourself in a place where you've just got people that don't understand this journey, help create those moments, right? Help connect people so that they have the chance to experience, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you love that kind of music. Or in my case, I didn't know you studied Bollywood dance. Wow, that's really cool. Let's talk about that. There's always something from a human perspective that can connect us. And the faster people can get to that, the better. And the more openness it is to showing up to the next thing where maybe they'll learn something new. So I love that thought about even back in the 60s, it was music united. There are certain things
yeah.
about us as humans that transcend across every culture, and we need to hone in on those things to create those spaces for people to connect.
So true, so true. Nickoria, where do you see the future of DEI as an
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah. So I really hope that at some point we're not talking about DE. We're living it out, right?
Right,
That's the ultimate goal. Work myself out of this job, please.
yeah.
All right. I have a colleague that leads our LGBTQ plus ERG at work, and he says, "I want to get to a place where it's normal to be out at work. It's not a thing. It's not a thing we talk
Right.
about. It's not a thing that we have to have conversations about. I want us to go there, right? That's where I want the future to be." But I also, being in business, one of the most frustrating things for me is that people don't see the value in the business impact or a business value in DE&I. So if we look at the world and where we're going, we are becoming more diverse, more multicultural. It's not going to be the people that were in power in terms of spending and consumerism are not the same people if you look ahead, right?
That's right. I think in the United States, I think the latest figure, 2045,
Yeah.
whites will become the numerical minority in the
Yeah.
United States. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And
Go ahead.
no, you're fine. I mean, that's the reality. The reality is that people that are multicultural or, non-white, that's where the buying power is going to be. And the other thing is the buying power is actually in the folks that are your students that are on this call, right? In terms of the next few years where we're going. And so you take all of that into account, the multi-generational kind of world we live in, the fact that we're becoming increasingly more multicultural, companies that don't understand how to connect, how to show up in spaces, how to differentiate themselves internally and consumer facing, they're going to be in a world of not great situations. Let's just put it that way. Not
Yeah.
insert cuss word. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But anyway, literally, so people that have to get it right today and start building their vision and their strategy, not to just show up and be like this, industry mogul, but to really impact communities and to make sure that they're at a place of service. So that's where I see the future of DE&I going is it's not just about taking care of our employees inside of the four walls or our students in our organization. It's really about driving business and creating economic value for communities. So that's kind of what I see as the future.
Yeah, that's so true. I think increasingly more companies are recognizing that business case for diversity. And then you look at the Diversity Inc.'s top 50 companies. I mean, they're always are outperforming other companies. But I think when people look at those lists, they're like, oh, okay, so let's become a more diverse organization. But they don't realize these companies have spent years trying to get to this point because, I've been looking at like the Beating Diversity Inc., diversity
Mhm.
issues, all these different magazines, like since the 90s.
Yeah.
And they've been that vaccine's been around that long, and so that means
I
these
know.
companies, when they first brought out the list, I can't remember when it was, that's because they working at this,
They've been working
putting
at this
forth
and they're
this.
going to leapfrog ahead, right?
Right, leapfrog
And the
ahead.
folks that just kind of got woke right at
Yeah,
summer of 2020 with George Floyd. Trust me, I'm thankful that we had this awakening
yeah,
overall as a country and in the world. But like we're already behind, right?
yeah,
We're
exactly.
already behind, and if you can't cast that future and understand how to show up in the new world, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, so true. Going back, I love how you talked about the human element and how, there's some things that irrespective of our race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever our background is, there's always that human element. Things like music, things like, and I'm getting to the fun part now,
Yeah,
your
I
top
like that.
five question, things like,
Oh,
here's what she wanted us to ask everyone.
I
Her
did.
top five movies.
Yes, I love
And
movies.
why? So we get to learn a little bit about Nickoria and connect. Yeah. So tell
Mhm.
us,
Okay,
what are the top five movies and why are they your top five?
I will. I will. But before I say that, the reason I chose this question is actually really intentional.
Mhm.
If you stop and think about how our minds, attitudes are shaped, a lot of it has to do with media.
So
And
true.
I have loved movies. I used to go watch movies with my mom when I was a kid, single mom. That's what we did. I still do that to this day with my son. We'll go and have date night at the movies. And so movies for me are like a place of respite. I am one of those people that will turn on Netflix in a heartbeat. So anyway, that's why I chose movies. So my movies are interesting. They're not in any necessarily order, but I did pick five because you asked me to pick five. So my first movie is Gladiator.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that movie.
Man, anytime it's on, I can't flip past the channel. I have to watch it. It doesn't matter where it is. I can probably do the whole talk track of the movie. But the reason why is because I get every emotion in that movie physically possible. Talk about being human. I get angry. I feel like I am a part of their journey. I'm sad. I feel happy. I feel all the things, right? But the thing that I stopped and thought about is one of the other reasons I love it is because here's this man who's living his life. Social status is high. He is doing a thing. Something happens and he's thrust into the middle of a social class that he's not used to being in, number one. Number two, he's around people from all over the place that are kind of in this gladiator kind of prison walk or whatever. They're forced to fight for their lives, but at the end of the day, he still emerges as a great leader. Like, what is that? If everybody could figure out what that is, he had no problem. He related to people, he inspired people, even in the midst of all of that stuff. And then at the end, the outcome, of course, everyone loves. But he treated everyone with respect. He garnered and earned respect from people that did not think that he could be who he was. So anyway, that's one of the movies.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. That's a good one. I,
Yep.
I like that movie too. I watch it often.
Yeah. So I have to share, we giggled a little earlier about Morgan Freeman voice. So I just had to put it out there for you. Your radio voice, Morgan.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah.
Yeah. So Shawshank Redemption is my next one.
Yeah.
Man, that is a hard story of,
Yes.
being wrongfully imprisoned. But I look at, oh, somebody said yes. So you know what I'm talking about. When you stop and think about all the stuff that's happening, the deep friendships and relationships, the tragedy, the assumptions people are making about people.
The
Um,
assumptions. Yes.
Man, I mean, think about all those assumptions. Like, did they know that homeboy was actually a tax accountant?
Right.
Guru
Exactly.
is.
Right.
Yeah, they about to
Right.
throw him off the ledge because they don't think that someone who's in prison can actually be that person. And so it's all the things and it's the joy of, the escape at the end of the day and him standing in that dirty, nasty water I couldn't have made it through, saying, I am free. Woo! And then he brought Morgan Freeman along with him. Man, all the things about that movie.
Yeah.
All right.
That kind of speaks to what we were talking about before. Yeah. The long game.
The long,
Right. And because his whole escape was like, oh, I don't, man. Yeah, right. Just, yeah. I guess we don't want to do spoilers, I guess. But yeah, having that long range.
Everybody on the call probably seen shot.
Oh, yeah. I see a lot of, I see a lot of reactions. So,
yeah, man. All right. So we'll shift it up a little bit and go to the Matrix. So yeah, I have to.
yeah.
Something about that movie.
Yeah.
That actually makes you look around and go, am I in a real life or not? And what I love about it, it's like you kind of know something ain't right when everything kind of happens over and over again, like in this perfect cycle, right? And so I love the fact that you have a choice to break out of that, red pill, blue pill, or not. And when you wake up, you're struck in the face with all the crazy that you're living in, right? Humanity dying, got these machines, you're plugged into a system that's basically, all of the things, but good, googly moogly. That humanity part of how humankind can come together and we can figure out how to break out of the machine, literally. That's like huge. And then I love Keanu. I ain't going. He's got a little fly. I really like him. I love John Wick too, but I didn't put it on my list. But anyway, something
John
about
Wick was
that.
good too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's there.
The Matrix, the whole freedom thing was awesome. Too. And then the
Breaking free.
price for freedom.
The
And
price
people
for
don't
freedom.
realize that. Like one of the characters, I can't remember his name, when he was eating the steak, the one who sold them out.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, but if I can eat this steak and drink this wine, I can stay asleep. But it's a lot of people in our jobs. Oftentimes, that's what we have to do. We have to wake people up from this dream into reality. Like the world you're in, that's not the real world. You need to come over to reality. So, wow, thank you.
It's the wokeness, right?
Awareness.
It's like, can you see what's happening behind your little blinders of the world that you are living in? Yeah, I love that, Jason. All right. I know we're wanting to leave time for questions. So I got two more.
And I'll stop. I'll stop interjecting.
Okay. No, you're good.
This is my fault.
This is why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Black Panther. Boom. Mike.
Yeah.
I have been waiting my entire life for a movie that was on caliber of a Superman, of a mega blockbuster film. And when I went to see Black Panther, I was so proud. And I was proud because our children now have somebody in a storyline that's all about being Black and being excellent and like all of the things. I'm getting chills right now just talking about it. Yeah. And so when Chadwick Boseman died, there were a lot of people that were like, why is he so important? Why is he so important? I'm like, you don't understand what it's like to never see excellence that looks like you on a screen.
That's right.
And that is what that represented for our little boys and children. And it will continue to be Wakanda forever, will continue to be a moment, right? Yes. Across our culture. Because I was just floored and so proud. So
yeah, me too. It was such an also great movie. I remember when it first came out, folks, I saw a Facebook post. They were in front of the movie poster. Yeah. They were pointing to the poster and their kids were smiling and happy. And they said, and I hope that the statement does not offend anyone, but it resonated with me when he said, this is what white people feel like all the time.
Yeah.
Right? To be able to see yourself in this this presence on screen, great movie, awesome superhero. And it wasn't just Black people, the whole world loved that movie too. And so, and I thought about that, like, that is so real. It's like,
Yep.
when you go into the store to buy a doll for your daughter, right? You
Mm,
have to look through all these other dolls to find those few
1 or 2.
dolls that look like her, right?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
that resonated with me. Like, this is what some people feel like all the time. And
Mhm.
that was an interesting point.
And I love
So,
that. And there are other movies that have
uh,
been, you know, just as successful in other
yeah,
communities. And so I just love the fact that companies are it's not even taking a risk anymore. They're doing the right thing because
yeah.
as we talked about, the dynamics of the world, demographics of the world are changing. And it's important that people see themselves and that we have an opportunity to pour into our children. But anyway, I can go on forever about that.
Yeah, that's true.
My
Yeah, we both
last
could.
movie,
Yeah. Mhm.
yep, plan to black out again on November 11th. All right, I might be right there with you, Christine. So the last movie is one that I love because it takes something that I grew up enjoying and merged it with a love story because I'm a sucker for love. So it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, what? Yes.
Man, that movie
Oh,
right there.
yeah. That's my
OMG.
movie right there.
Yeah. So I grew up with my stepdad was a big Bruce Lee fan. And so anything kind of martial arts or
Yeah.
of that particular walk, I love. So I love fighting. I love samurais. I love,
Mhm.
just all of that type of experience. And this one happened to be about love and integrity and honor. And that journey that movie takes you through, I mean, every time I watch it, it's just like a whole new experience. And so that's my last movie. It was hard. It was hard. There were some other ones I wanted to put out. You told me 5, so I tried to do a good job.
That's a good 5. I'll take that top 5. That was,
Okay.
man, you coulda had me watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon
Okay.
tonight. I haven't seen it in a while. That
Yeah.
that that movie had layers. That was the first, like, martial arts movie really it came out, like, on the big screen, like, in
On the big
forever. It
screen
was
with,
that's awesome.
representation of, a little bit of insight into some of that community and that
Mhm.
thinking and what honor means.
Yeah.
And then the love story on top of that, right? Like you said earlier, are you willing to die for love? And,
Mhm.
man, love it. Anyway, yeah,
Man, top
that's my
5. See,
top
look,
5.
wow, I didn't realize we had see how the connection. I didn't realize we had so much similar
See?
interest in movies too.
There
That's
you go. Movies can bring people together too.
the top 5. So so now we're at the time where our listeners and our audience, if you want to, you can share your camera now, and we're gonna open the floor for any questions that you have for Nickoria. So feel free to, and also if you can also type them in the chat, and I can read
Yeah,
them out and who they're from as well. So, any questions? Any questions from Nickoria?
I'd love to hear from y'all.
Hi, Nickoria. Thank you for speaking tonight, going through this with us. I had 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, so they say that it takes 2 to 3 years to change a company's culture. Do you believe this is true regarding DE&I also, or do you think that it takes longer?
That's a great question. So I'm going to say it takes longer. And the only reason I say it takes longer is because of some of the things we talked about earlier. You're going to have people on it's like a whole spectrum of where people are with accepting DEI, with accepting the fact that they might need to personally grow in the area and that personal growth that you can't put that on a timeline. And it's kind of like a ripple, one drop of water, one person gets it, it can make a ripple across your company. So I think it takes a little bit longer. So I've been in my role for a year and a half formally, but really doing this work for 2 years. And I promise you that I am seeing some results in the numbers, right? In terms of, how many folks we have around the table from different identities, et cetera. But where I'm really seeing a voice is in the people that feel like they belong. And that is representative to me of the cultural change. So I think it takes probably at a minimum 2 years, but probably longer to really see those fruits of the work that you're doing.
Okay, great. My second question was, how large do you think an organization needs to be in order to justify having a CDO instead of just HR?
That's good. That's a great question. So my company, when I got this role almost 2 years ago, was probably about maybe about 650, 700 people total. And they felt passionately enough that it was important for their people to invest a full-time resource. And then I'm in consulting, right? So to pull me off of revenue generating work to focus on our people, our culture, and forwarding DE&I. And then I also have a manager on my team. So I don't want to say that Credera is special or different, but I've seen companies that are very large, multi-billion dollar companies that still have yet to name an executive to really lead this initiative. So I really think it's about the vision that a company has for DE&I, the level of support. And then even if you're named that person, you have no budget, you really can't do a whole lot. So again, I put that accountability for creating that space and that priority on the C-suite of companies, regardless of size.
Thank you. That answers my question. Makes a lot of sense.
All right, cool. Thank you for the questions. Real great questions.
Hello,
Hi.
hello. Go next. Oh, my bad, my bad. You can go first, actually. It's okay.
No, okay, sounds good. So, hi, my name is Crystal, and I just had a quick question for you. So, as the Chief Diversity Officer, do you find it difficult to implement the needed changes when leadership may not be diverse? I know that you kind of talked earlier about creating that different human connection, but how do you kind of maneuver through those situations when those connections aren't made?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, at our company, it's been around since 1999. We're privately held up until 2018. So, we have a lot of people that have been with the company for a long time that, weren't necessarily understanding why DE&I, right? And so, I will say that the best thing that I found is don't be judgmental. Don't use DE&I like a hammer to hit people over the heads. Instead, try to make sure that people understand the humanity in DE&I, number one. And then number two, the business case for DE&I. And once they do that, once their eyes and ears are open and minds are open, then you can figure out how to create a lot of experiences for people to really feel the journey. And I say that because I've got some clients that, privilege walk is like a scary thing. Like, are we can't do that. Can't talk about privilege. So they changed the name to opportunity, right? Okay, whatever. But we got their executives in a room to go on this journey of questions that help them understand or reflect on how they got to where they are. And they found that there are more things in common, and they found some surprising results. You would have expected the white males to be at the very front of this privilege walk where you take a step forward, given the answer to the question. If it's positive, you take a step back. If you don't, that's a whole concept. And I tell you, that really was impactful because people always have something that they struggle with, right? And something they're not accepted for. And if you can get people to understand that part, you really have hit it home. And then moving forward is a lot easier. I know it was a lot of words for a question, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, I
Yeah.
definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like how you raised that point, Nickoria, because that's so true that it's able to get them think outside and transcend past some of the demographic or social identity groups to which they belong when they realize that, oh, privilege is more than just about race or my identity. It's about all these other things, socioeconomic status, and then they begin to build some empathy
Yeah.
towards others when they are able to see themselves in situations where they had to take those steps back, right? Because they feel that. Yeah,
That's huge. And those moments are the ones that are most impactful. And that can take the people that are maybe on the edge of not really even understanding the value. You make it real to them. And then they're like, aha. And you want them to have those aha moments.
right. And for our listeners, if you can email me at imagineconsultingllc@gmail.com, I can share with you their videos, or you can Google on YouTube where you can see examples of the privilege walk, like, big things. So you can get an idea what that is. And also another point I wanted to do is define the term. I think, Nickoria, you mentioned the term ERG. Just for our listeners to let you know, that stands for Employee Resource Group. They're also known as affinity groups as well. All right. I think we have a question in the chat, but I think there was another question
Christine came off me.
that wanted to talk. Yeah. And then the one that's in the chat, that'll be the last question. But first, we'll start with I think it was Christine.
Yeah, Christine, he's off mute again, it looks
Yes.
like.
There
Yeah.
you go. Thank you.
Awesome. I just wanted to thank you both for even creating this opportunity in the first place. I feel like things like this, like Zoom meetings like this, are definitely important, and like people everywhere should be on this type of call. But I just want to say thank you first and foremost. I think another question I had, because I know you guys were talking about how DEI has always been a thing, since back in the past. So I was just gonna ask, sorry. Besides Diversity Inc., which you mentioned, what other books, articles, or magazines, like resources, can we look into, dive into, that will educate us further after this call? What would you suggest looking into?
Yeah. So I follow a bunch of DEI focused groups here, especially here locally, because in Dallas, we have a bunch of them. So I follow, and I hope it's okay, Jason, to name a few. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
All right. I follow,
absolutely.
I follow Diversity Crew. I think they're doing some really innovative, interesting things. I follow Canaris, Kanarys, who is led by Mandy Price. I see Jason shaking his head. If you want to talk about data and insights, that's the company you want to align with. And then I just literally attach to people on LinkedIn, honestly, that are doing DE&I stuff, because I find textbooks are great. I'm studying global diversity right now, and I can post a link to a global diversity group, global diversity author who's pretty amazing. Her first name is Rohini, and I don't want to get her last name wrong. But like thinking about DE&I past the US is where I'm at. And good or bad, there's not a lot of authors, but there is a lot of content you can find on LinkedIn. And if you notice a lot of followers, you probably want to check them out, what they're saying.
Nice. All right. And I think another question I had was what positions, like I'm about to graduate, I'm a senior. So I'm just looking into
Congratulations.
Hey, graduate.
It's been a long time. Thank you so much.
All right.
What kind of positions or places of work regarding DEI or HR, like you mentioned earlier, like what, I guess, positions or titles would you look into? Like, what would you suggest being
Yeah.
fresh out of college?
Sure. So you can look at things like DE&I coordinators or DE&I consulting is interesting because you'll be able to attach and learn. But if you're looking at HR career, my manager, she specialized in employee engagement. And when you stop and think about most of the purpose inside of the four walls of DE&I is to keep your people and to understand what makes them happy, what motivates them, et cetera. So employee engagement could be something interesting. And then lastly, I'll say like HR legal stuff. Okay. And the reason I say that is at its core, businesses really do invest money and time and resource into making sure harassment's not happening, making sure discrimination is not happening, making sure they're complying with EEOC. And that would be a great place to start. And then moving into other roles that might be more pure play DE&I focused.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the questions. And then Jason, I know you want to cover the question in the chat. Do we still have time?
Yeah, we sure do. So we have a question in the chat from Claudia. And Claudia asks, what advice do you have for people to better practice DEI? I realize that adequately practicing DEI is a continued journey, but pulling from your experiences and extensive knowledge, what advice would you personally give?
Yeah. And you have to be open, period. Right? You have to be open to exploring things about you. You have to be open to exploring things about other people. So being able to learn how to be more empathetic is important. And then secondly, being able to understand your own journey, being self-aware about your own biases and how you think so that you can do something about those areas you need to. If you have those two things and you're open, I really think that that's what you need as an individual and then as a company culture as well.
Are there any more questions anybody has? Thank you. That was a great answer.
I have a quick question if we have time.
Yeah. Oh, that was supposed to be the last question. You are the last question. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I love you, Jessica.
So I believe like your last guest was Dr. Steinyard. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but
Dr.
thanks for
Steinyard,
speaking
Director
up.
Steinyard.
Yes. So he was saying that I asked him about his hardest, I guess, experience he had in his position. And he said that it had to do with someone that was African American. And he found that in most of his, I guess, engagement or whatever the issue was that he was dealing with, there was another African American. And I was going to ask you, for you, do you find it to be the case, like, sometimes, because I know sometimes hate begets hate, and with African American being not as, open minded to certain things, or in our culture, or not practicing DEI?
Yeah. I have not had that experience where it's, someone within my culture not being, supportive. I will say that I've had some experiences bringing more diverse folks from diverse communities into our environment, and not having the right levels of support for them. And then that creates a overgeneralization that, oh, well, this type of individual won't do well in our company. And that is a heartbreaking moment for me, because it's like, I know my background, right? Someone mentioned they're finishing up their senior year. It took me 9 years to finish my degree, right? I was working and trying to, pay bills, honestly. I came from my mom was a teenage mom. We didn't have much growing up, right? All the things could point to me being dumped into a corporate environment that, if I hadn't had the internships I had, I wouldn't have known how to be successful, right? So companies have to really invest to make sure that that doesn't happen. Otherwise, you're going to continue to bring folks from communities, folks with diverse backgrounds and experiences that aren't, quote, perfect culture fit, and bring them in. And it's heartbreaking when it doesn't work out. So I would say that's my hardest thing is, when it doesn't go well, why didn't it go well? And sometimes it's on us, and sometimes it's, it's on me. and that's the part that's really hard. Yeah. That's what I would do.
Yeah. And to kind of touch on what Dr. Stinger was discussing, I think a lot of it has to deal with sometimes people feel like there's a competition of resources based on their
100%.
identity group. And
Mhm.
sometimes that happens. And due to the fact that right now there's so much attention, which is warranted towards the Black community and what the Black community is going through, especially since the death of George Floyd and now the great resignation and microaggressions and things like that really have impacted us so much. I think some of his concern was when trying to manage DEI, it's hard to please everybody all the time because everyone is like, okay, what about me? Okay, but now what about me? And you go to this group, it's what about me? And so that can be very challenging to juggle all of that sometimes. So that was a very, very, very interesting question. Glad you posed.
Yeah.
So just I'll let you all know, there's some other resources that are listed in the chat for you. And also, if you want to know when the podcast is going to launch in February 2023, you can also sign up for our mailing list. You'll get tips on DEI monthly about things that's going on in the space. But thank you so much, Nickoria Johnson, for being with us today. I think, man, I want to say, man, best guest we ever had, but I'm going to say that to
I'm the second one. So
right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, it was my pleasure. I love coming and talking about, the realities of DE&I. I don't know everything, but I'm so excited that you allowed me a chance to speak and to speak to your students on top of that. And I saw a question in the chat. Yes, please follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to support students in their walk. And just put my first name in. I should pop right up. It's very unique.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. I learned a lot today as well. And it's late, as you know, so we will let you go.
All right.
And
enjoy on all night talking about this. But
I know we could.
Everybody's hungry.
Exactly.
At least I know
everybody's
I am.
hungry. Yeah, me too. So have a great evening, everyone else. All our guests in the audience, thank you for joining us today. Peace out, Dr. J.
All right, Dr. J. Holla. Good night, y'all. Bye.